Hello, my name is Erin DeFort, and I'm the Vice President of the SnoValley Chamber of Commerce. And every election, we do a candidate forum to help the voters in each district get to know their candidates. Today we have with us Robert Amenn, and he is running for position 2 in District 12. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run?
I believe that every citizen of this state should have a good opportunity to achieve a good job, have a good home and education for their children, to have good health care, and to have a good shot at retirement, a good retirement. And I feel that the current leadership in this state has, over the last years since we've moved here, has passed policy after policy that make it difficult for citizens to achieve that objective. I think that what they feel, the current leadership feels, is that they need to throw money and government at a problem to solve it. I have a fundamental belief that government should set up, the goal of government is to empower people to help themselves. But more importantly, I think it's set up to enable people to help other people who can't help themselves. It's really important that when an elected official gets elected, at the end of their term, we should see meaningful and substantial progress. What do I mean by meaningful and substantial progress? I'll give you 2 examples. In the town of Gold Bar, we have Highway 2. Highway 2, every year I see people die on that highway needlessly. I see traffic jam after traffic jam. And I find that in the 20 plus years that I've lived in Gold Bar, I cannot understand why the state has not solved that problem. Another example would be the foster care system. I think there's a lot of children that age out of that system not prepared for adulthood. And I think that the current leadership wants to thinks that we throw more money at that problem, we're going to fix it. And I don't think that that's going to work. What I think that leadership needs to do is to look at the policies to encourage people to do the things that we're doing in Gold Bar with Albion Skills, and give mentorship and to give training to these teens so that when they age out of the system, they're set up to be successful, to have to get a good job, and more importantly, to have the mentorship and the skills to transition to adulthood. And if politicians can't accomplish that, I think that they need to be replaced by people who have the passion, the skills, and the smarts to get that done. In my life experience and my philosophy of government, I feel puts me in a good position to provide that kind of leadership. And that's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So the next question is, as Washington moves towards a future of only non-carbon emitting energy, how do you balance the growing need for electricity with the reliability of the grid?
I think that it requires a good public-private partnership there. I think that the state needs to ensure that they create policy that empower people to build out a really good grid. And I also think that the state needs to continue to pass policy that allows the business, the tech sector, or the smarts that people have to create a really good, well-functioning grid. I do not believe that I think that government can't do it alone. I don't think any one representative can solve these problems alone. I think it requires good leadership to allow a lot of people to think about solving the problem and give it an open, fair playing field to be able to be innovative and creative. You see, I come from the software system, tech system. I'm a software developer by trade, and there's a lot of innovation that happens there. And partly it's because there's a framework where people who are empowered to solve problems. And I think that it's important for the legislature and the state, or in any kind of up and down the system, needs to make sure that they have policy that empower people to provide solutions, where you can't look to the government as providing a solution. You have to look to the citizens as a whole for a solution. And I think that is a good way that we'll have good sustainable energy, and we'll have a good grid to meet our needs, which I think we need, moving away from fossil fuels and to more of a carbon neutral type environment.
Next question. What role, if any, is there for the state legislature to ease the growing concerns about affordability, i.e. housing prices, fuel prices, and inflation in general?
So I think that with respect to that, I think the legislature can do a lot, because I really feel that the policies that cities and towns and as well as state legislature put in place have made it more difficult for people to get affordable housing. I'll give you an example in Gold Bar. We have in the Gold Bar, we have the Growth Management Act, and the Growth Management Act is a very good act in the sense that it keeps growth around cities. But in the case of Gold Bar, because we don't have sewers, we can't grow. So what happens is it's kind of superseding the purpose of the Growth Management Act. They don't allow us to grow. And if there were policies that found the mix between allowing growth in areas where they will transition, eventually Gold Bar will transition to sewers, but we're stuck in the middle. And that kind of policy makes it hard to build housing. That's like an example where the government gets involved and has a negative impact. I think with respect to fuel, I think that, climate change is an important issue that you need to deal with. But when you deal with it, you need to put in policy in place that's going to have meaningful change, that's going to accomplish something. And I think that the way the government has regulated the fuel and the types of taxes they put on fuel and the regulation they put on fuel doesn't achieve the effect of fixing carbon change, but it adds additional burden in the cost of fuel. And I think when you look at the policy, every policy the government passes should have some goals that they achieve. And if it's not achieving those goals, we need to back out that policy and rethink our solution. So whenever we put together a policy, it should have meaningful and substantial change, but it should reduce the impact on citizens, particularly with gas or in housing. What's important, I think, that when we try to solve problems, it's really important to provide leadership. And when I mean leadership in the sense that I don't believe that you can go to Olympia, pass a law, and climate change is going to be fixed. I don't believe that you can go to Olympia and pass a law and, you're going to get, better fuel prices. What I think you need to do is you need to create an ecosystem that empowers people to solve their own problems. And I think there's a number of people in the state that really think that climate change is an important issue to get together. And I think that what we want to do in the government is to be smart about it, and to basically create policy and rules that get people's creative juices going to solve these problems. And we should not try to solve it with one law. We should create an environment where solutions come out of it and tap into the collective creativity of all the citizens.
All right, the next question. Washingtonians have become increasingly concerned about community safety. What steps can the legislature take to help in this area?
From my perspective, I think I think that a lot of the things that have led to problems with safety is a reaction to some of the policing issues where there's a lot of people in the minority community that have been, unfairly put in jail or unfairly convicted of crimes. And so I think there was a swing in the direction to kind of loosen that up. And what I think the legislature needs to do is to think about when you went in this one direction and you opened up the concept of no bail. You got to look at that kind of policy and you got to say it's potentially as an objective to achieve. Does it achieve that objective? If it's not, the legislature needs to rethink that policy. And the goal would be that when we create a justice system or a crime system, that you create a system that when people commit a crime, they're properly punished, and that we reduce the number of people that are incorrectly punished, because no system's perfect, but focusing on making sure that we have good policy is tremendously important. And you want to make sure that when you pass policy, you understand potential unintended consequences. So the problems that we're having in Seattle come from my perspective, trying to do good, but maybe overshooting the mark and not properly thinking through how do we make sure that every citizen gets the proper justice, and every citizen is treated, when they're committed, charged with a crime, that they have proper representation. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you don't create an environment where criminals are getting out to do repeat offending. And probably the bail policy is one example where that we need to tweak that to think about how we do that.
So I'm going to give you one final question and then you can wrap up.
Sure.
If you had the ability to pass one piece of legislation next session, what would that legislation be?
Oh, interesting. Oh, I don't have to think. That's a surprise. The thing that I would have is so many. I can't pick the most important one, so I'll pick one that I think is interesting. I would pass legislation to make it to rework the way zoning is done in the state, to make sure that when zoning is done, it has a clear, that it's done in terms of that it's done to make sure that people's safety is involved. Like there's zoning policies that are put in place to make sure that, industry is kept to a certain section, and that industry is kept to a certain section, and that certain development happens. But I think that zoning has been used more to necessarily keep a neighborhood from changing. And I think that if the legislature passed policies that allowed zoning to achieve its proper effect, industry in certain areas and housing and good types of housing, but not for it to be used to prevent development because people don't want change. I think that would be a good law. That type of law would go a long way to potentially fixing our housing problem. Our housing, I think our housing problem is attributed to a lot of the policies that we have, like with the Growth Management Act in Gold Bar, where people in the county won't let us grow without sewers and things of that nature. And I would have a legislation to rethink the way we legislate land to make sure that the things that are in place make sense and protect people, but at the same time, government doesn't make it too difficult to build.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Again, this is Robert Amenn, and he's running for position 2 in District 12.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.